And that's where I think on Panerai, the issue I've had with them, when they had their peak of popularity and then everybody said, you know what, I don't want to wear them anymore. Now they've come back not as strong as they were. And part of the thing is, you go to buy a Panerai brand new in the store, you're as soon as it leaves the store, it's dropping 20-30% easily on the secondary market. And there's so many variations of every single model. So two brands I was going to ask you about. The first one is Panerai. What is their strategy? What are they trying to do now? What's going on with them in your estimation?
Well, they're very popular in India and China right now. So I think that they don't care as much about the rest of the world because those are huge emerging markets. And so I think a lot of the brands are chasing the Asian market. And so for them, that's where the strategy is to try to go a little smaller to fit the risks, but still trying to play on some of the Panerai image. But like you said about resell, and that's where Panerai and their limited editions really upset their fan base because they had the Bronzo, and the first bronze was a must-have, and that was one that held its value really well, was selling above list. It was a flex piece, and then they came out with a new Bronzo every month, and so now those bronze pieces, again, for an outsider coming in, oh, I like that bronze with blue, or I prefer it with the brown, or I really like it with green. It's great for us, and then you get good deals. But if you're a hardcore Panerai guy and paid above list or fought or got on the wait list and finally got that bronze, and then a few months later they introduce another, you could see why it would be upsetting. But so that's where I'm not sure where that strategy is, because the strategy is obviously to sell more watches, and if something becomes popular, obviously it's going to get a sequel. But it really hurts the long-term brand image and brand integrity. But they're part of Richemont, so again, they have a higher level board to answer to. They have shareholders to answer to. So their main motivation is to push product out the door, because as soon as a watch leaves Switzerland, it's sold. So it doesn't matter what the end user pays for it. It doesn't matter what the resale or what the market says. All they care about is moving it from Switzerland to a jeweler. They don't care if the jeweler dumps it or sells it at half price or gives it to Joma Shop. As soon as it left Switzerland, it's sold, and that's what they have to show to the board.
But they have a certain amount of resources, obviously. It seems like it's unlimited, but I'm sure they look every year across the board at their brands. And if they have, let's say, 20 brands, they're saying this one has the best profit margin, this is moving the most amount of volume. That's where they're going to get the advertising dollars, I assume. The ones that are not really moving and not being requested, they're going to be stagnant. That's the way I saw it. And Panerai, correct me if I'm wrong, is there a ladies' version of a Panerai? I don't recall ever seeing a lady wearing a Panerai watch. And if I did, it would only be a Radomir. I don't recall ever seeing a lady wearing a Luminor.
I think the smallest ever is a 40. And I'm sure some WWE divas could probably pull
they could pull it off for sure. Ronda Rousey, 1,000%. But there's your idea. Panerai, ladies' version of Panerai, soften it up a little bit. Let's add some diamonds, and what be it. I think they could be onto something there. That's one brand. The other one I was going to ask you about today, RJ, that I'm still kind of stuck on because I really want to see them improve, but I don't know how, is Tag Heuer. And I think at the end of the day, the only solution I've had now for about 5 years, I've said, if we drop the Tag name, just go back to the old school Heuer name. I think that, because all those are their models that seem to do the best. Get away from these like $10,000 tourbillons and all this other crap, and let's just stick to the old school racing. That's the bread and butter.
Well, yeah, I think Tag is a very confused brand right now, and I think that, like you said, in order to really move forward, they should sever the lines, because there was a time where Tag in the 90s was a serious contender, and you can always tell how well a watch is doing based on the counterfeit market. So if you went down Canal Street in New York, it was nothing but Rolex and Tag for a while.
With Vuarnet France, yes.
Yeah, so I think Brad Pitt was a tag ambassador, and so they were really contenders. And then along the way, they went down market, and then they tried to be techie, they tried to be affordable, they tried to be entry level, and then they got the idea of, like you said, is this $10,000 tourbillon, but people who want tourbillons don't want to pay $10,000 for it. And so they really confuse things. Some of their models I absolutely love. The Monaco and the Octavia, I think, are great. Their new Carrera, I think, is fantastic. And even the full gold the Aqua Racer or Aqua Timer, I think those are gorgeous watches. But I think they need to create a definite distinction and a line and leave some of the lower end and the techie and the smartwatches down to a tag brand. And then, like you said, label it new as Heuer or tag, brand tag, whatever they need to call it. I think they need to make distinctions, because you can't, and this is the thing with brands, and this is what I said for the longest time with Seiko, Grand Seiko, Audi, Volkswagen. You can't have the B class and the high end Maybach with the same keychain, and so you can't share that showroom with that same brand. So I think a distinction needs to be made there. Because it's a shame, because they have some fantastic watches. They just need to rebrand and remarket.
Maybe it's like a Hyundai, Genesis, Seiko, Grand Seiko. I think the tag is going to be the Seiko, and the Heuer is going to be the Grand Seiko. And I agree with you. I would separate out. I would get rid of tag altogether. But if you're not going to do that, you have to keep them separate. You got to bring up the prestigious level of that brand, because until you do that, no matter how much history you're going to show me, when I look at that showcase and I see the tag link, I just feel ill. I just want to walk away from it, And I wish they would stop making it. I don't understand it. But
it's a really interesting brand that you haven't talked about that will be really interesting to see in about 4 days is Blancpain, because now they're doing a Swatch Blancpain collaboration.
I was not aware of this.
So the Moon Swatch.
Oh, yes, I do.
Swatch has been incredibly popular.
Yes,
and it was the only thing that actually helped somewhat keep Swatch Group solvent this year, because sales were not great. But Moon Swatch was a huge success, and so now they're doing it with Blancpain. So the big question is what this means for Blancpain. Is it a chance to introduce Blancpain to the masses, which could be great for Blancpain, because that's a brand that's tragically underappreciated and underrecognized. And in fact, all these people who say that Invicta and Time, they all make Submariner homages. The Submariner is an homage to the 50 Fathoms. That was the first diver watch, black bezel, black dial, steel case. That was the original. And nobody gives Blancpain any credit. So if you can bring Blancpain to the consciousness of the masses, it could be great, or it could end at Swatch, because this is the problem: is no one really aspires to a Blancpain. A lot of the mainstream populace might aspire to a Speedmaster, because at least that still has some brand cachet. Some people, even not into watches, might recognize the Speedmaster, and a chance to get it at an affordable price was exciting. So I think all the watch geeks and the flippers and resellers are going to be the first to try to buy up all the Blancpain swatches. But as far as whether it'll move the needle on Blancpain will be interesting.
I have my doubts, simply, and I'll play devil's advocate on it.
What do you think of Moon Swatch?
I'm not a fan of the
you don't
the Swatch.
Oh, come on.
If I had an Omega chronograph, if I had Dark Side of the Moon, for example, and I see somebody wearing the Swatch one, I feel like it's cheapening my product. It's like what Calvin Klein did and Polo did when they had, you can buy CK in the regular store or you can buy the outlet version. And I think it just cannibalizes their product. And that's why you don't, LV and another Burberry, what they do is they destroy their garments instead of having to discount it. And I think that's where I think you should be at. But again, you know what? I'm not the marketing guy in this, and maybe it'll help move it for sure. It's interesting though. At least they're doing something different. I'll give them credit on it. At least it's something that I would never like. Even when they did the Omega one, I would never guess in 1,000 years they would do that.
Yeah, well, the original conception for that was that it would be a loaner when you sent your Speedmaster in for service. You know, here's a watch you can wear until your watch comes back, because sometimes it takes months and months for it to come back from
So while your
service.
Rolls Royce is getting fixed, here's a Civic. Yeah, gotcha. Gotcha.
The Rolls logo on it. But so that was the original conception, is that it would be kind of a loaner watch, and then after you might have the option to buy it or send it back. And then I think when they saw the product and the potential, they just put it out to the market. What I don't know is if it's done anything for Omega. It's definitely been great for sales at Swatch. Don't know if anyone now who bought that says, now I need an actual Speedmaster. I think any of the watch people were like I bought one for my daughter, right? I bought the pink one.
The Swatch, not the Omega.
Yeah, the Moon Swatch.
Yeah.
She never wears it. I don't even know where it is, but bought more for myself.
And that's why I don't think the Swatch Group was concerned ultimately with bringing up the prestigiousness of Omega. This was simply a dollar play. This was like, let's sell volume, let's make some hype around it. But from the prestigiousness of Omega, I can't say it did that at the end of the day. But again, this is about board of directors. This is not about
that's why the Blancpain choice is so interesting, because obviously the next natural thought would have been the Seamaster. Yeah. But again, that might have further cheapened Omega as a brand. If every Omega you can also get as a plastic watch, it might have done too much damage to the Omega brand. So what probably started as the Seamaster swatch then became the Blancpain swatch, because they probably felt that it would have hurt the brand too much.
And this is where, as we're going to sum up today's episode, you thought you're going to get away from this, RJ, but you're not, because we touched upon Rolex a little bit, but we're never going to have an episodes without bringing them up at some point. Yeah. And you start bringing thoughts to my head. Think how many people have no idea that Tudor and Rolex are the same company. Yeah. Ultimately, even when we do know it, we still don't think of them that way, because they're so smart of the separation. You don't see it as this cheapens my Rolex. You just see it as a totally different brand. And that's where I think now their acquisition of actually having mortar stores and another brand. Tell us a little bit more about how you think this is going to affect the watch market now that Rolex is kind of growing from within, so to speak.
Yeah, so Rolex has just acquired all the Booker stores, or Butcher, I don't know how to pronounce it, but to acquire all those retail stores is really interesting, and no one really knows what Rolex is thinking, and that's the tough part. It's been great because it's been great content for a lot of watch bloggers and whatnot, and everyone pretends to know what it means. But I really have no idea what it means, because Rolex, the smartest company in the world, and so when you've got a company that successful, that good at the game, that capable of moving the needle with just one announcement, obviously there's a brilliant strategy there. And sometimes, again, they can play the long game. So this strategy might take a decade to play out, but I'm not sure where it's going. If you look at some of the things they've done, though, I think they're seeing how much money they're leaving on the table, because this whole Rolex pre-owned idea, letting their retailers then resell certified Rolex pre-owned, they know that it's hard for a retailer to sell a Daytona at MSRP, which Rolex insists upon. So how do you sell someone a watch for $14,000 knowing that they can turn around and sell it for $40,000? Who do you like that much that you're going to hand $26,000 in cash to? So that's why they're making people buy jewelry and other brands, and so until their profits on the other crap you've bought equals $26,000, you're not going to get that watch. Right. So, and how can you blame a retailer for that? Like, who would you hand $26,000 to?
Which is literally what it is, right?
Yeah. So this way, it gives the retailer a chance to then cash in on the market hype. So they're doing some of that whole Daytona Le Mans edition. You know, Rolex historically, they don't do limited editions. They've never said this is limited, but it's a special edition. And so for them to do that, obviously they're recognizing some of the trends and the hype, and they know this is a piece that is going to command a big premium. And so whether or not that's going to be sold exclusively through their own boutiques, they might hold a few boutiques for themselves. I don't think they'll completely abandon their distribution model, because it's not like some of the smaller brands like Langa, who just wants to go boutique and control the product. They can do that if they only make 5,000 watches a year. Rolex makes 1 million. They can't completely do that, but they might keep the best for themselves and have some strategies for cashing in on the popularity of the market. So there might be some way to purchase these through boutique only that requires some roundabout way to pay the increase in market price. So not sure where they're going, but I think they recognize how much money they're leaving on the table, and they can't just raise the price to market price. Like, they know these prices won't last forever, and so I think they're smart enough to think 10 years ahead. But I'm not sure what they're going to do with their own retail network.
It's a lot like Apple, I would think. The same way they bought out Beats. There was rumors at the time they're going to buy out Tesla and making their own Apple car. Rolex is sitting on so much money. You might as well invest it in something. You might as well keep it in our bread and butter. The company that they had acquired, Busher, or however you pronounce it, do you see that being the brand at all now being moved as far as interest wide, or is this going to be more like a Tudor type situation?
Yeah, I don't know if they will acquire the brand or just the retail stores.
I thought it was both. I thought it was both the brand and the store.
The brand, then they could potentially do a lot with the brand. And the thing that they do with Tudor is that's their playground, right? So they'll do the black watches, the ceramic watches, the bronze watches, things that they definitely wouldn't do with their
power reserves, Rolex. Clear backs. Yes.
Yeah, with their core Rolex product, they just wouldn't do it, because the best part about Rolex is the fact that a 40-year-old Rolex looks a lot like a 1-year-old Rolex, and so that slow glacial pace of change, small subtle changes over years, it makes the watches truly timeless. And so that's what these generational watches, they make them so that they'll last forever, not only in the way they're built, but in their relevance. So they never go too far to one end or the other. The times they've tried, they failed. When they did the Day-Date 2 and tried to do, I don't know why they still hang on to the Upmaster 2. But
because people in Miami in yachts need a watch too. That's why. Because rappers and actors in Miami need a watch.
If they've acquired Busher, the brand, it'll be interesting, because that's a brand that again, great watches, but resell is almost sad, because they've got the annual calendar, which a watch I think retails for just under 10. And you're lucky to see that move for 5 or less on the forum. So this is like less than dealer cost, because the most aggressive dealer cost is about 50%. So you're giving Rolex is about 35%. I think Omega's down to 40% now. So if you're selling for less than dealer cost, you know that it's a dud. And yet it's an annual calendar, good looking watch, nice finishing, all, you know, on paper, everything that a luxury watch should have, but nobody wants it because there's no brand cachet or you know, bragging rights or flex appeal to it. So if Rolex can infuse some of that to the Busher line, then that's a brand that could really see a great future, because they're great pieces and they have complications that Rolex, for whatever reason, won't do. So which I've never understood why Rolex do the annual calendar or a minute repeater or some of these. They definitely have the capabilities. They have the resources, but for whatever reason, are uninterested in that higher level of photorology. But
Could
they'll
you
be able to.
could you see Rolex at some point acquiring a real major player like an FP Journe or a Patek or an AP? Do you think
No,
at some point?
never Patek, but the Journe thing is interesting because I mean Chanel bought up a portion of Journe, and this is a one man show,
Yes.
and so as he gets a bit older or slower or less capable, as Parkinson's that's in, or a tremor, or his hand becomes less steady, or the mind starts to go, then the brand is effectively done unless they can manage a good transition and make him immortal, which will take a genius of marketing. You know, at best, it's going to be that the hardcore Journe guys are going to, you know, aggressively buy up all the pre-Journe and post-Journe, or sever that line between pre-Journe and post-Journe and try to buy up all the pre-Journe. So they'll have to do something magical that makes that brand last. I mean, for me, I'm still not a full believer in the whole Journe thing. And I remember when Frank Mueller was the hottest watch in the world, and so it somewhat reminds me of that. And I
Hublot?
think,
Remember when everybody have to have a Hublot?
but Hublot is just genius marketing.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know about the Journe in the longevity of it. But right now it's hot. Apparently he's a bastard, but he's definitely not a friendly dude. And so
Look at the numbers that his watches are getting at auction aftermarket. Wow.
yeah, but remember not that long ago they couldn't give them away.
Yeah.
So it's all it takes is that you know that tulip mania and that FOMO, and all of a sudden things explode. But I think that's a bit of a bubble, at least in my opinion.
RJ,
So
I remember going to Panama in 2018 and being at the Rolex authorized dealer there in the mall. I could have gotten any model I wanted, as many
yeah,
as I wanted, no questions asked, as many discounts as I wanted. There were different times, and that's where, you know, we talked about this throughout COVID and post COVID, and telling people are not going to buy these forever, and you watch interest rates and you watch economies. You know, the Rolex bubble has not burst, so to speak, but it's showing its cracks, certainly.
oh, it's definitely deflating. It's I think some models will always hold value and will be above retail price. I think that there's a lot of vested interest in trying to keep this house of cards upright. But I think that you can only maintain that facade for so long, because already the two tones are below list, the explorers are below list. So some reality is starting to come back, because some of those unpopular models that people were buying up just because it had a crown on the dial, no one wants those. I think there's a two-tone explorer still. We have talked about this two-tone explorer last time. I think it's still for sale, and it's dramatically below list. It's actually a pretty good discount, but no one wants those pieces. So those are things you can't keep in the back for too long, and so those are going to start to end up on the in the dealer showcase.
And yet, two tones were the ones that they increased the highest percentage of the price across the board. As we end today's episode, you know, I ask you every single time. So we're sitting here now. It's towards, you know, fall, as we go towards winter of 2023. What is SuperDoc's plan for watches? Do you have a grail in mind? Do you have early New Year's resolutions? What's in your watch collecting? Where do you see heading in with watches? What's the next step?
Yeah. So it used to be about, so last year was about hunting the whales. And the problem with the hunting the whales is I've captured some whales, but you can't take a whale to work. You can't take a whale to school with you. So the whale acquisition has been great, but diminishing returns on the wearing pleasure, because you can't, or at least don't feel right wearing it every day, banging them around. And then, you know, just the nature of what I do. I don't want to have someone's yearly salary on my wrist. So I find that I loved acquiring the whales as a collector, and I look at them lovingly in the box, and the chances I get to wear them are just heightens the value of the event, because not only is it an occasion, it's one in which you're wearing a special watch, but I'm missing out on that day to day. So I think it's more going to come back to that day to day watch. I think the next on the list is probably, I'm torn between the Grand Seiko 5-day Power Reserve diver with the blue dial and bezel and the water ripple dial, or the Ultra Deep. So those are very similar in size and wrist presence. So and then there's similar prices. So it's going to be one of those two, because those divers are nice to wear on a daily basis and at the beach and in more casual settings. The Rolex GMT two-tone I really like, the yellow gold one.
Yes.
Other than that, there's not a heck of a lot on the radar. We'll see what the brands put out there. And every now and then I just get surprised because something pops up on the forums at an unbelievable price, and you end up being it ends up being everything you never knew you always wanted. And then you must have it. So we'll see. There's not too much on the buy list right now, but we'll see. We'll see.
You know what's gonna happen. It's gonna be January, February. You're gonna talk about all these crazy new innovations and these brands we gotta have, and then Malibu Stacy's just gonna have a new hat, and we're just gonna must have that Malibu Stacy with the hat. That's what's gonna come down to.
Well, it'll be interesting to see Watches and Wonders this year, because last year was pretty muted.
Yes.
And I think it was the first little cautious year of what's going to happen, because that's when you started to see the bubble start to shrink a little bit. And so moving forward, I think that I don't think it's as bright and rosy as a lot of people are trying to pretend it is on the luxury front or the resale front. So I think that there's some legitimate concern. So we'll know based on Watches and Wonders how concerned the industry is, because if it's more subdued, if it's less of those diamond encrusted, less flex pieces, more just kind of bread and butter, then we'll know that the industry is hurting a little bit.
I guarantee you, when we have you on closer to the Christmas season, New Year's, and we get through those markets, I think we'll know the state of the world at that point, the economy. It'll be very interesting to see where watches are at and what they're going to be hyping up. But I think, again, it's like you're saying, you look at those secondary markets, you look at the forums. Let's see, for example, in the 3 to 6 months where those Batmans are at. That's our measuring sticks. What are Batmans and Pepsi's at? And that should tell us everything we need to know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a perfect barometer.
Well, it's a great plan. Thank you again for sharing your time with us. And folks, you're going to have Super Doc's contact information, whether you have questions on creating your own spirit room or that must-have Grand Seiko, Omega, what's the best way to wear a watch, use a winder, not a winder. This man has forgotten more about watches than we'll ever know. Appreciate your time as always on The Chosen Life, and we'll see you back soon.
All right. Thanks again. You're not doing the send-off or what?
Look, you want to do it? Let's do it. Look, see, you do that, like yours has a muscle on a muscle. So keep living the chosen life.
Keep living the chosen life. All right. We'll talk to you later.